The Arizona sun beat down relentlessly as Olivia Green clutched the tattered remnants of her hope close to her chest, alongside the weathered map that had led her nowhere. It was 1873, and the promising new life that awaited her in Silverwood had vanished with her husband's final breath 3 months prior. Now she stood at a crossroads, literally and figuratively, with no idea which path to choose. Dust swirled around her boots as she squinted at the horizon, the unfamiliar landscape offering no comfort. Her throat was parched, her water supply dangerously low. The horse she'd purchased in Tucson had gone lame yesterday, forcing her to leave the poor creature at a small homestead she'd passed that morning. The elderly couple had been kind enough to offer her a meal and directions, but somehow she'd taken a wrong turn. Tears threatened, but Olivia blinked them back. At 26, she was too young to be a widow, too inexperienced to be alone in this unforgiving wilderness. The trunk containing all her worldly possessions sat beside her, impossibly heavy now that she carried it alone. The sound of hoofbeats made her spin around, her hand instinctively reaching for the small derringer hidden in the folds of her skirt. A rider appeared through the heat haze, tall in the saddle, his form growing clearer as he approached. Olivia tensed, knowing all too well the dangers a woman alone might face in these territories. The horseman slowed as he neared, and Olivia could see he rode a magnificent chestnut stallion. The man himself was tall, broad-shouldered, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He wore a dusty brown coat over a simple shirt with worn leather chaps covering his legs. A gun belt circled his waist, but his hands remained relaxed on the saddle horn. "Afternoon, madam," he called, his voice deep and clear. He tipped his hat back, revealing a weathered face with kind eyes. Not young, but not old either, perhaps in his early 30s. "You look a mite troubled." Olivia hesitated, assessing him quickly. His eyes were an unusual shade of blue like a summer sky after a rainstorm. Despite his rugged appearance, there was something trustworthy in his expression. "I appear to have lost my way," she admitted finally, her voice cracking from thirst. He dismounted with the fluid grace of a man accustomed to life in the saddle. Leading his horse forward, he extended a canteen. "Drink first, then we'll sort out where you're headed." Olivia accepted the water gratefully, taking careful sips though she longed to gulp it down. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson Xavier, madam. Most folks just call me Jax." "Olivia Green. Mrs. Olivia Green," she added, the title still feeling strange on her tongue. "Where you headed, Mrs. Green?" He glanced at her trunk, then at the empty trail behind her. "And where's your transport? My horse went lame. I had to leave her behind." Olivia gestured vaguely westward. "I'm trying to reach Silverwood." Jackson frowned. "Silverwood, you're a fair piece off course, madam. That's nearly 40 miles northwest of here." He looked at the sinking sun. "And with night coming on, you don't want to be out here alone." Olivia felt the weight of his words. 40 miles, on foot with a trunk. Impossible. "I have family there," she said, the lie slipping out before she could stop it. In truth, she had no one waiting for her, just the deed to a small parcel of land her husband had purchased sight unseen. A foolish dream that died with him. Jackson studied her face and she wondered if he saw through her falsehood. "Well, Mrs. Green, there's a settlement about 10 miles east of here, Cottonwood Springs. Not much, but there's a hotel and a general store. I've got a small ranch outside of town. I can take you there for the night, and tomorrow we can figure how to get you to Silverwood." Wariness flickered through her. "I couldn't possibly impose. It's no imposition to help someone in need." His smile was gentle. "My sister lives with me. You'd be plenty proper." Relief washed through Olivia, followed immediately by embarrassment at her assumption. "That's very kind, Mr. Xavier." "Jax," he corrected, securing her trunk to his saddle with practiced movements. "Can you ride?" "Yes, though it's been some time." He nodded and helped her up onto his horse before mounting behind her, keeping a respectful distance between them. "I apologize for the close quarters, madam. I'd rather face impropriety than rattlesnakes," she replied, earning a low chuckle that she felt rather than heard. They rode in silence for a while, the rhythm of the horse's gait lulling Olivia into a contemplative state. The landscape was beautiful in its harsh red rock formations, scrubby vegetation, and a vast blue sky that seemed endless. So different from the green hills of Pennsylvania where she'd grown up. "If you don't mind my asking, what brings a lady like yourself to these parts?" Jackson's voice broke into her thoughts. Olivia considered another lie but found she didn't have the energy. "My husband died 3 months ago." "Consumption. We were meant to start anew in Silverwood. He bought land there, sight unseen." "I'm sorry for your loss," Jackson said, and the simple sincerity in his voice nearly broke her composure. "Thank you." She paused. "I don't know what I'll find when I get there. I couldn't stay where we were. Too many memories." "Starting fresh takes courage," he observed. "These territories can be hard, but there's opportunity here for those willing to work for it." As the sun began to set, the landscape transformed, bathed in golden light. In the distance, Olivia could see a cluster of buildings that must be Cottonwood Springs. Jackson's ranch appeared before they reached town, a modest but well-maintained property with a main house, barn, and corral. A few cattle grazed in a nearby field and chickens scattered as they rode into the yard. A dog came bounding out, barking a greeting. "Quiet down, Rusty," Jackson called, dismounting and helping Olivia down. "Margaret," he called toward the house. "We've got company." A woman appeared on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps a few years older than Jackson, with the same striking blue eyes, though her brown hair was streaked with gray. "Well, well," she said, coming forward to meet them. "Who have you found now, little brother?" "Margaret, this is Mrs. Olivia Green. She was stranded on the North Trail, headed for Silverwood. Mrs. Green, my sister Margaret Xavier." Margaret's eyes were kind but assessing as she took in Olivia's travel-worn appearance. "You poor thing. You look about ready to drop. Come inside and I'll fix you something to eat while Jax takes care of your things." Inside, the house was simple but comfortable, a large main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area, and doors leading to what Olivia assumed were bedrooms. Everything was neat and clean, with handmade quilts and simple furnishings that spoke of a practical but not impoverished life. While Margaret prepared a meal, Olivia washed her face and hands in a basin of water, grateful for the chance to remove some of the trail dust. By the time Jackson came in from tending to his horse, she felt somewhat more presentable, though still acutely aware of her wrinkled traveling dress. Dinner was a hearty stew with freshly baked bread, and Olivia realized how hungry she was as she took her first bite. The conversation flowed easily, with Margaret asking gentle questions about her journey, and Jackson occasionally contributing observations about the territory. "You can take my room tonight," Margaret said as they finished eating. "I'll bunk with Ruby. She's our young helper, comes in from town most days. She'll be excited to meet you tomorrow. We don't get many visitors out this way." "That's very kind, but I couldn't possibly—" "Nonsense," Margaret interrupted firmly. "You need proper rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to worry about what comes next." That night, lying in Margaret's comfortable bed, Olivia finally allowed herself to cry for her lost husband, for her uncertain future, and for the unexpected kindness of strangers. She hadn't realized how exhausted she was, how tightly she'd been holding herself together. Sleep claimed her quickly, deeper and more restful than she'd experienced in months. Morning brought the smells of coffee and bacon, and Olivia dressed quickly in her spare dress, grateful she'd packed it where she could access it easily. When she emerged, Jackson was already at the table, his hat beside him, drinking coffee. "Morning," he greeted her. "Slept well." "Better than I have in ages," she admitted, accepting the cup of coffee Margaret handed her. "Thank you both for your hospitality." "I've been thinking," Jackson said. "I need to head into town today for supplies. I can ask around, see if anyone's headed towards Silverwood who might give you a ride." "That would be wonderful," Olivia said, though uncertainty gnawed at her. What awaited her in Silverwood? An empty plot of land. She had some money but not enough to build a home from scratch. Over breakfast, Margaret chatted about the town and its inhabitants. It's small but growing. Got a proper doctor last year and talk of a schoolhouse soon. Do you teach, Mrs. Green? Jackson asked suddenly. Olivia nodded. I did before I married. Children aged 6 to 12. Well now, isn't that interesting, Margaret said, giving her brother a meaningful look. Cottonwood Springs has been looking for a teacher. It's just talk so far, Jackson added quickly, but folks are eager for it. After breakfast, Olivia insisted on helping Margaret with the dishes while Jackson prepared to go into town. As they worked, Margaret spoke candidly. My brother's a good man, Mrs. Green. Lost his wife and baby son to fever 8 years back. Hasn't looked at another woman since, though plenty have set their caps for him. Olivia wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected confidence. He's been very kind. He sees something in you, Margaret continued. I haven't seen him take to someone so quickly in years. Before Olivia could form a reply, Jackson returned to the kitchen. Ready to head into town, Mrs. Green. I thought you might want to see it, maybe get a few supplies. The town of Cottonwood Springs was indeed small, a single main street with wooden buildings on either side. The general store, hotel, saloon, and a few other businesses made up the entirety of the commercial district, with houses scattered behind and around them. At the general store, Mr. Peterson, the proprietor, greeted Jackson warmly. Jax, good to see you. And who might this be? After introductions were made, Jackson explained Olivia's situation. Anyone heading towards Silverwood in the next few days. Mr. Peterson scratched his chin thoughtfully. Not that I know of. Stage doesn't run that way till next Tuesday. Tuesday was 5 days away. Olivia's heart sank. You could stay with us until then, Jackson offered, seeing her expression. No trouble at all. I couldn't impose further. Got a room at the hotel if you prefer, Mr. Peterson interrupted. Though it ain't cheap, and not nearly as comfortable as the Xavier place, I'd wager. While Olivia considered her options, the store door opened, admitting a well-dressed man with a neatly trimmed beard. Well, if it isn't the reclusive Mr. Xavier, the man said, his tone friendly but with an undercurrent Olivia couldn't quite identify. Mayor, Jackson nodded, his posture subtly stiffening. Mayor Oliver Blackwell. The man introduced himself to Olivia, taking her hand and bowing slightly. A pleasure to meet such a lovely new face in our little town. Mrs. Olivia Green, she replied, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. Mrs. Green is passing through, Jackson explained, on her way to Silverwood. Silverwood? The mayor raised his eyebrows. Not much there, I'm afraid. Cottonwood Springs has far more to offer a cultured lady such as yourself. An awkward silence fell, broken by Mr. Peterson clearing his throat. Mayor, those supplies you ordered came in yesterday. As the mayor's attention was diverted, Jackson guided Olivia toward another section of the store. Don't mind Blackwell, he said quietly. Fancies himself important because he owns the biggest house in town. They completed their shopping efficiently, with Jackson insisting on adding a few items to his purchase that Olivia suspected were for her benefit. Outside the store, they encountered a young woman who greeted Jackson enthusiastically. That's Ruby, Jackson explained after introducing them. Margaret mentioned she helps out at the house. Ruby, a freckled girl of about 19, beamed at Olivia. Mrs. Xavier said you're a teacher. Is it true? I was, yes, Olivia confirmed. I've always wanted to learn more about literature, Ruby said eagerly. I can read and cipher, but nothing fancy. By the time they returned to the ranch, Olivia had decided to accept the Xavier's hospitality until Tuesday. The alternative, spending her limited funds on the hotel, seemed foolish when such a generous offer was available. That evening, after dinner, Jackson invited Olivia to join him on the porch. The night was clear, stars strewn across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. It's beautiful here, Olivia said softly. It grows on you, Jackson agreed. When I first came, I thought I'd stay a year or two, make some money, then head back east, but the land gets in your blood. How long have you been here? 12 years now, came after the war. He didn't need to specify which war. Needed space to breathe, to forget some of what I'd seen. Olivia nodded, understanding. Her husband had fought too, returning changed in ways she'd never fully comprehended. You said you're a teacher, Jackson continued. Is that something you'd want to do again? I loved teaching, Olivia admitted. But my husband wanted me home, and after he got sick, there was no question of working. The town council's been talking about a school for over a year now. They've got money set aside for a teacher's salary. Not a fortune, but enough to live on. Olivia felt a flutter of possibility. You think they'd consider me, a proper educated lady from back east? They'd be fools not to, he paused. Unless your heart's set on Silverwood. I don't even know what's there, she confessed. Just a deed to land I've never seen. I could take you to see it, Jackson offered. It's a day's ride each way. We could go, look at your property, and you'd still have time to decide before the stage on Tuesday. The offer was generous, and Olivia found herself agreeing before she'd fully thought it through. The idea of seeing her land the last link to her husband's dreams was compelling. But equally compelling was the unexpected sense of belonging she was beginning to feel in this place, with these people. They set out early the next morning with provisions packed by Margaret, who had smiled knowingly as they departed. The day was clear and mild, perfect for traveling. As they rode, Jackson pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the territory. Olivia found herself laughing more than she had in months. Your sister said you were married once, Olivia ventured during a rest stop, immediately regretting her boldness. I'm sorry, that's terribly forward of me. Jackson didn't seem offended. Margaret talks too much, he said, but his tone was affectionate. Yes, I was married. Caroline was her name. We had a son, Thomas, lost them both to fever the same week. His voice was steady, but Olivia saw the pain in his eyes. I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago, 8 years this October. He looked at her directly. Your loss is still fresh. It gets easier, though it never quite leaves you. Edward and I were married for years, Olivia said. No children, though we hoped. She hadn't spoken about this to anyone. Sometimes I wonder if it's wrong that I'm not more devastated. We cared for each other, but it wasn't. She struggled to find the right words. Wasn't a grand passion, Jackson suggested gently. No, it was comfortable, pleasant even. But toward the end, when he was so ill, I realized how little we truly knew each other. The admission felt both disloyal and freeing. Jackson nodded, not judging. Marriage is different for everyone. No right way to feel about it or to grieve it. They reached Silverwood by mid-afternoon, or what there was of Silverwood. The town consisted of a handful of buildings, most in disrepair. A small trading post, a ramshackle saloon, and a few scattered homes were all that comprised the settlement. It's smaller than I expected, Olivia said, dismay evident in her voice. Let's find your land, Jackson suggested. Might be better than it looks from here. Using the deed Olivia carried, they located her property about a mile outside the settlement, 20 acres of scrubby land with a small creek running through one corner. There was no house, no improvements at all, just open land with a beautiful view of distant mountains. It has possibilities, Jackson said, but his tone lacked conviction. Olivia stood in the center of what was now hers, trying to envision the home her husband had planned to build. She couldn't see it. Instead, her thoughts drifted to Cottonwood Springs, to Margaret's comfortable kitchen and Ruby's eager questions about books. I think I've seen enough, she said finally. They made camp that night by the creek, a small fire providing warmth as the desert cooled rapidly after sunset. Sitting side by side, watching the flames, Olivia felt a curious peace settle over her. What will you do? Jackson asked quietly. I don't know, she admitted. This land. It was Edward's dream, not mine. I came because I thought I owed it to him, but being here doesn't feel right. No, she looked at him gratefully. Is that terrible of me? Not terrible, honest. He added a stick to the fire. What was your dream, Olivia, before you married? The question startled her, both for its insight and for his use of her given name. I wanted to teach, to have my own school someday, to make a difference in children's lives. You could do that in Cottonwood Springs. Perhaps. She hesitated. But what about this land? Land can be sold. Or kept for another day. His eyes met hers across the fire. Dreams shouldn't be abandoned so easily. That night, lying in her bedroll looking up at the stars, Olivia felt something unfurling within her, a sense of possibility, of choice. For the first time since Edward's death, she was thinking about what she wanted, not what was expected of her. They returned to Jackson's ranch the following afternoon, dusty and tired but somehow lighter. Margaret took one look at them and smiled knowingly but said nothing. Over dinner, Olivia announced her decision. I'd like to stay in Cottonwood Springs, at least for now, if the teaching position is truly available. I'll speak to the town council tomorrow, Jackson promised. They meet every Friday at the hotel. Where will you stay? Margaret asked, though her expression suggested she already had an answer in mind. The hotel until I can find more permanent accommodations, Olivia replied. Nonsense, Margaret declared. You'll stay with us until you're settled. The house is plenty big, and I've enjoyed having another woman around. The following day, Jackson took Olivia to the town council meeting. Mayor Blackwell presided, his surprise evident when Jackson presented Olivia as a candidate for the teaching position. Mrs. Green is a qualified teacher from Pennsylvania, Jackson explained to the assembled men. She's considering settling here permanently. We haven't finished the schoolhouse, one councilman objected. The old Jensen place could be fixed up temporarily, another suggested. It's been sitting empty for months. Mayor Blackwell studied Olivia thoughtfully. What subjects would you teach, Mrs. Green? Reading, writing, arithmetic, history, basic sciences, and literature, she replied confidently. I believe in a well-rounded education. The discussion continued for nearly an hour, with questions about methods, discipline, and salary. Finally, Mayor Blackwell called for a vote. The council approves hiring Mrs. Green as the town's teacher, he announced. Salary of $40 per month, with the understanding that classes will commence once suitable accommodations are prepared. Olivia's heart soared. A real position with a real salary enough to support herself independently. Outside the hotel, Jackson congratulated her. Looks like you've found your new start. Thanks to you, she said warmly. I don't know how to repay your kindness. No repayment necessary, just seeing you happy is enough. His smile made something flutter in her chest. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. The Jensen house, a small but sturdy two-room structure near the center of town, was cleaned, repaired, and outfitted with desks and a chalkboard. Word spread quickly about the new school, and soon Olivia had a list of 28 potential pupils ranging in age from 6 to 16. Through it all, she continued to stay with Jackson and Margaret, contributing to household chores and expenses but feeling increasingly at home. Each evening, she and Jackson would sit on the porch, talking about their days, sharing stories from their pasts, or simply enjoying comfortable silence. One Sunday afternoon, as Olivia sat reading in the shade of a large cottonwood tree near the house, Jackson approached with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, handing her a glass. "I was just thinking how different my life is from what I expected." She accepted the drink gratefully. 2 months ago, I was a grieving widow heading for an unknown future. Now I'm about to start a school and feel more at home than I have in years. Jackson settled beside her on the wooden bench. "Sometimes life takes us where we need to be, not where we think we're going." "I whispered I was lost," Olivia said softly, remembering their first meeting. "And you said, then follow me home." "Did I?" Jackson looked surprised. "I don't recall being so forward." Olivia laughed. "Perhaps not those exact words, but that's what happened, isn't it? I followed you home." Their eyes met, and in that moment something shifted between them. Jackson reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. "I'm glad you did," he said simply. The school opened the first Monday in October, with 23 pupils present and eager. Olivia found herself thriving in the role, adapting her Eastern teaching methods to the practical needs of Western children. Some students rode miles on horseback to attend, bringing lunches packed by mothers grateful for the opportunity education provided. By November, Olivia had moved into rooms above the schoolhouse, insisting that despite the Xavier's generous hospitality, she needed her own space. Margaret had helped her furnish it simply but comfortably, and Ruby came by regularly to continue her own education with more advanced books Olivia had ordered from back east. Jackson called on her properly, taking her to dinner at the hotel's small restaurant or escorting her to community gatherings. Their courtship was unhurried, respectful of her recent widowhood, but grew deeper with each passing week. On a crisp December evening, as they walked back from a town Christmas gathering, Jackson stopped beneath a star-filled sky. "I have something to ask you, Olivia," her heart quickened. "Yes, I know it hasn't been long, and I understand if you need more time." He took both her hands in his. "But I've come to care for you deeply. More than I thought possible after Caroline. I believe we could build a good life together. Are you asking me to marry you, Jackson Xavier?" Olivia's voice trembled slightly. "I am," he smiled, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I'm asking if you'd consider becoming my wife, sharing my home, our home, and perhaps one day raising a family together." Olivia didn't hesitate. "Yes." His kiss was gentle but filled with promise, and Olivia felt as though she'd finally found what she hadn't known. She was seeking not just a home or a purpose, but a love built on mutual respect and genuine affection. They married in April, when the desert bloomed with unexpected color. The whole town turned out for the celebration, even Mayor Blackwell, who had become one of Olivia's most ardent supporters after seeing the school's success. As they exchanged vows in the small church that had been completed just weeks before, Olivia thought about the journey that had brought her here. She had set out for one destination, but found her true home elsewhere, guided by a man who had seen her worth when she was lost and uncertain. That evening, as they stood on the porch of the ranch house, their house now, Jackson pulled her close. "Happy, Mrs. Xavier?" "Very," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Though I do wonder sometimes about that land in Silverwood." "I've been meaning to tell you," Jackson said. "I received a letter last week. The railroad's planning a spur line that will pass near your property. The value has already doubled." Olivia laughed. "Perhaps Edward knew what he was doing after all." "Perhaps he did," Jackson agreed, "but I'm selfishly glad you chose to stay here instead." "So am I," Olivia said softly. "So am I." In the years that followed, Olivia continued teaching, eventually moving the school to a proper building as Cottonwood Springs grew. She and Jackson welcomed 2 children of their own, a daughter, Emily, and a son they named Thomas, after the child Jackson had lost. The land in Silverwood was eventually sold for a handsome sum, which they used to expand the ranch and establish a scholarship fund for promising students who wished to continue their education. Life wasn't always easy in the harsh territory, but it was full and rich in ways Olivia had never imagined when she stood alone at that crossroads. She had whispered she was lost, and in finding her way home, she had discovered not just a place to belong, but a love worth building a life around, one day, one choice, one moment of trust at a time.